Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Legge. I'm going to talk about the teaser agreement, the Trade in Services Agreement. Next, forward. Forward. Prior to the World Trade Organisation, whilst there was trade in services, there weren't rules, certainly not multilateral rules, for governing the trade in services. And they were introduced in the WTO in 1994 under the GATS Agreement, the General Agreement on Trade in Services. The US and the rich countries didn't get everything they wanted in 1994 in terms of services, trade in services, and there was an undertaking to do a review and try and further liberalise trade in services from 2001. One of the things, for example, that the rich countries wanted was to, or the service exporting countries wanted, was to move from a positive list to a negative list. So under the GATS agreement, countries say what will be covered in the trade agreement, and that's that. Whereas in a negative list, unless you explicitly identify what will not be covered, everything is covered. The renegotiation of the GATS agreement fell in a hole in the mid-2000s because the service importing countries, mainly developing countries, refused to accept the standards which were being pushed. And from 2013, the really good friends of trade, including Australia and the UK and the US and the EU, the really good friends of trade thought we'll transfer the negotiation to a new forum, and in due course we may be able to bring it back to the WTO. There's been 21 rounds of negotiation. A few texts have been leaked, but a lot of it's still confidential. But it's really quite uncertain about where it's going to go at the moment. The countries involved are there, but I don't have time for you to read them. Sorry. The agreement as it stands includes what we'll call sectoral annexes, which deal with particular industries and specific disciplines. And there's a couple of points to be made about this slide. First of all, that the teaser agreement is not aimed at health, it's aimed at financial services and professional services, legal services, and so forth. There's also a lot of interest in telecommunications and transport. But health is most definitely at risk in the negotiations. In terms of financial services, one of the major risks is that the kind of policy strategies which are needed to prevent a return of the global financial crisis would be excluded by some of the bids which are being put into the teaser agreement. So in other words, the kind of regulatory strategies which have emerged as important ways to prevent a further global financial crisis would be excluded. Now, health comes in part because of the export of health services, including, for example, medical tourism and the transfer of real people. But one of the major issues is health insurance. So under the national treatment model, if you've got a private health insurance sector, as we have in Australia, and you sign on to so-called national treatment, which means that foreign investors must get the same treatment as local corporations, then we can have foreign investors coming in to deliver health insurance. But, and here I come to the specific disciplines on the right-hand side of the slide, is that whatever you, and Ron covered this, whatever you agree to in terms of liberalisation, you're facing, first of all, no regression. You're facing a ratchet situation, basically. You can liberalise further as much as people will agree to, but you cannot de-liberalise. You cannot re-regulate and impose new restrictions, even on service industries which have yet to be invented. So some of the bids being put through into the teaser agreement would provide that you will not be able to regulate X service industry, even though we don't know what it is. So this stuff is really worth reading into, and my colleagues have given me 5 minutes and I can't. So I urge you to do the reading. Who are the winners and who are the losers? What are the promises? What are the concerns? The promises are increased volumes of service trade because of the reduction of discriminatory barriers to trade, economic growth, particularly for the net exporters of services, in particular the net exporters of financial services, to say the banks, the insurance companies, and the alleged trickle down, and as Ron has dealt with. Now, the beneficiaries in relation to those promises are the corporations, in particular the finance sector, and the countries who export services. And in Australia's case, it's the education service in particular. The concerns include global market concentration, privatisation, ratchet privatisation, locking in privatisation, weakened protection for offshore data, and a number of other concerns. And the losers are going to be the small and medium enterprises at the national level, national service companies, workers, including would-be workers, and so on. In terms of the implications for health, we are looking at a very significant possibility of this agreement being used to promote privatisation of health care as well as health insurance. Medical tourism being globalised and supported by national health insurance, so your national health insurance body will be required or allowed, I'm not sure, it depends which way it goes, to provide insurance cover for having your health care in Thailand or in India or wherever, but much more cheaply than it is in Australia. Reduced barriers to brain drain, new barriers to regulation of gambling, and so forth and so on. Fewer decent jobs. We can make a few observations about where we stand with regard to, where we stand with regard to the teaser agreement. The US, first of all, we don't know what Trump's going to do about it. Secondly, the US and Europe are at loggerheads about some of the issues, about the relative benefits. But something along these lines is being pushed, and is certainly being pushed in RCEP, as Belle has said, and in the other agreements. And there is strong grounds for public health professionals to take serious attention to it, to do more research and analysis, to recognise trade and health as an important area of teaching and research, to build international networks with scholars around these issues, to educate the profession, including our students and the community, and to participate in community mobilisation against trade agreements which are designed to entrench corporate impunity and which will have the effect of damaging the scope for population health and health systems.